Some people have quoted $3,000 to do this pan.
Pouring it down, and you'll be good.
I'm here to show you that it is a lot easier than that. It rotates easily into place. There's plenty of room. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop and week 2 of the daily driver fixing all the leaks. So last week we did the water pump, and when I did the water pump I found out the oil pan was leaking on this pretty good too. Now the oil pan is another thing that is also common on these motors, but most people choose not to address it because it costs a ton of money. If you take this to the shop, they're going to quote you like $2,500, $3,500 to do the oil pan on this. So most people just go, I'll let it drip for that much. And the reason is the dealership says that you got to drop the entire front axle, front suspension, everything out, and it's just a huge labor bill just to get to the pan. I'm here to show you that it is a lot easier than that. I'm going to show you how to get it done. Total cost was $60. Total time was about 2 hours worth of work. This is a job you do not need a lift. You can do it just as easily on jack stands or ramps. So anyway, I'm going to start this video showing you how to remove the fan shroud because it helps a lot to have that out. So to get started, really all you need to do up top is undo this clamp, and the connector here, and remove this out of the way. And then next we're going to remove this clamp so we can get the fan shroud out. Now to take the fan out, we're going to need to unplug it. It's just a simple clip back here that you got to push. And then you'll see that there are 2 screws here. 1, 2, they're both 1/4 inch. We got to remove those. I also went ahead and removed this P-clip, just kind of scoot them out of the way. That gives you plenty of room to get the fan out. Now gently kind of pry this up, just like on the bottom. There's little snaps here and there that you gotta pop it by. Everything else is going to take place underneath. Undone both of the snaps here. We're simply going to kind of pull back on this with a pick, and you can kind of just walk it off. So yeah, just gently pry this out. So now what I did is there's 4 little hooks. I kind of had to pry this one and then just popped it free. You do have to kind of move it out from the radiator, and again just kind of give it a little tap and it goes up. So now what I've done is also cut out just a piece of cardboard that kind of is almost exactly the size of the radiator, and that way we just kind of protect our radiator from if we happen to bump it. There we go. So now that leaves us with all kinds of room to work here from the front. So here's the plan. We're going to jack up the motor about 1.5 inches, and that'll give us enough room to get the oil pan out. So up top, we've already removed the intake piping, so that gave us enough room up top. Down here on the bottom though, we need to remove the motor mount bolts and loosen the transmission mount bolt. And that should give us plenty of room to rotate the motor up just slightly. So now what we're going to do is there are 2 15mm motor mount bolts here. We're going to go ahead and unbolt those, and that'll allow us to simply just lift the motor up a few inches to give us the clearance we need to get the pan out. So here's that side. There is ample room on the back to remove the back one with a gear wrench. Remove the motor mount bolts on the passenger side. There's actually pretty decent access to get the rear passenger motor mount bolt as well with a gear wrench. So this is the transmission mount, so we can tilt the motor up a little bit. We're going to go and just loosen these bolts just a little bit. And that hopefully give us a little bit more room to pivot. So now after the motor mount bolts are removed, it's time to jack up the motor. So I'm using a floor jack with some padding, and I'm just going to slowly raise the motor up until there's just a little bit of contact near the back. I found you can get about 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches out of this before there's any pressure at all behind the motor. And once the motor's up, I used just some wood blocks. I think they were about 1.5 inches each underneath the motor mounts, between that and the subframe, just so we can remove our jack and get the oil pan out. So let me show you your limitations. Right here, the first thing that starts to hit is the cat starts hitting the heat shielding. You can kind of jam your hand in there and feel how pushed up against it. Now with the motor jacked up a little bit, that gives you plenty of room to get these 8 15mm bolts off. You just remove all 8 of them and it comes right off. So these extensions have a 15-degree swivel on them, which makes it pretty easy to get in there. Alright, so let's see if there's any safe prying places that they've built in here. It's kind of a notch right here. I might be able to pry against. There it goes. All right. Oh, sweet. And that answered the question about the dipstick. It just kind of falls out. Well, that does show you guys that you can get the oil pan out with very minimal work. We did not even touch the subframe at all, and you could do this easily on the floor with a jack, just pushing up on the crank pulley. Just again, be very careful that when you jack it up, you don't actually hurt anything. So I kept checking, went progressively as I went, and I did undo the transmission mount. I loosened the bolts back there. But anyway, here's the bottom of our Hemi.
A Hemi, balls to the wall.
Now we got to get the new one in. All right, so the pan is out. Everything is cleaned up. We're ready to put the new pan back in there. So we have the pan. I got out the old gasket. It was like just super brittle. We got the new gasket here ready to go in. And so we're just going to make sure that this area is completely cleaned up, free of all oil. I've kind of let this drain upside down overnight, and then we can get to work putting this back in. But I did want to show you real quick how easy this goes in and out. So the way I have it right now is I don't have anything holding up the motor. All I literally did is plugged in some wood blocks as essentially spacers, just temporarily. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is this thing's gonna drop down 1 inch. You know, everything's still attached, subframe's all in. That's the only thing that's been undone, but check this out. Here, let me just show you how easy this thing goes in there. So I'm gonna put the back of it, including the dipstick holder, kind of just up over here above this line, push the nose in, and then you kind of rotate it around with the nose underneath these lines over here. It rotates easily into place. There's plenty of room. Then just slide it where you need to go, push it into place. That's it. So I mean, there's no jamming. It's not getting jammed up against anything, not having to bend any lines or hammer it through. It just kind of, almost like they meant it to be this way. So I've already wiped it down with some brake clean. Like I said, let it drain. So now I'm going to use a little bit of 91 isopropyl and just kind of go around the edges. I've actually already done this, but I'm doing it on camera. Kind of make a little, get everything out so it's super clean. All right, once you're content with that, go ahead and get the new gasket out. Oh yeah, this feels like rubber, not plastic. Now there are 4 kind of like hatched areas over here, and that's where the factory had a little bit of sealant, because that lines up with on the motor where the timing cover and the rear main seal cover have a rubber gasket seal too. So we will put a little bit, we'll probably put it directly on the motor side, but a little bit of RTV here and here, and that'll ensure a good seal. Now we'll go ahead and reinstall the bolts. So now we'll just do one last final wipe down. I've really cleaned this up a lot with plastic razor blades to make sure there was no leftover RTV. Previously the RTV was installed here, and then on the back side as well. Now you can use an RTV of your choice. I generally use the Permatex Ultra Black RTV, but lately I've actually liked the 211 stuff. I use this on a lot of my other cars, and I've just had 0 issues, whatever. It just seems to have a, I don't know, it works a lot better. The only drawback is it's white, but whatever. So we're just going to put a nice little bead right here. So now let's go and get this in the car. Just like I kind of already showed you, but I just have to work a little quicker, so now we're going to visually align the holes and then go ahead and just press it into place. Don't forget about your dipstick, so I made sure that was lined up. So now I'm just using my drill to kind of quickly get them snug, but obviously I'm not torquing it or tightening it with this. So now that we got all the bolts on there, we can go ahead and torque them down to spec. I put the specs in the description. So I'm using a torque wrench just because I want them all to be the same, but in reality, these can't be over tightened because they all have that that spacer on them. And go ahead and reattach our lines. Now we can reinstall the transmission brace or dust cover, whatever part you want to call this. The trick on this one is when you reinstall it, just to go ahead and get all of them, all the threads started, and before you tighten them down. So now I'll just go ahead and finish off this job by doing the filter, because we're doing a full oil change. If you'd like, I do have a video on that, linked in the top right corner. But I figure if you know how to do an oil pan, you're probably good with an oil change. I like to fill the filters about half full before I install them, just so they're not completely dry for the first start. And go ahead and just snug it up hand tight, clean off the area. All right, so now we got our floor jack back in place. Lift this back up. Now we can lower the motors back onto the motor mounts. And I guess this would be a good time to do your motor mounts if they're due. Looks like we might just need a little bit of screwdriver assistance to guide these holes back into place. Before you take all the weight off, make sure you can thread the bolts. All right, guys, so it's been about 3 months since I've actually done this. I'm just really lazy at putting out the video. But anyway, not a single drip from the water pump or oil pan. Really easy. Again, DIY is the way to go. So anyway, let's look underneath this thing real quick. So yeah, again, this is about 3 months, almost 3,000 miles of driving, and not a single drip. That pan looks dry. And up here at the front, not a single drip from the water pump or oil pan up front. So yeah, I'm very happy with this. If this video helped you guys, make sure you hit the like button and leave a comment below. Thanks, guys.